Hi and hello watch fans and welcome back to the Real Time Show with me, your friendly neighbourhood watchmaker, Rob Nuds. Today we are joined by Robert Bailey, Head of Sales of Laurent Ferrier for the second time, but not since November 10th, 2022, which is a shocking realisation for both of us. It's been 3.5 years since we've spoken on air, but Robert, pleasure to have you back in the studio.
Thanks very much. Pleasure to be here.
So today we are going to be discussing a very interesting topic that isn't often openly addressed. Now, Robert, of course, you've worked for many years with Laurent Ferrier, one of the industry's most respected luminaries in the field of independent watchmaking. And the topic we want to address is this: a brand and its master, how to prepare a legendary name for the next generation. Because, of course, so much of the Ferrier brand is knotted up with Laurent and his own personal history. We need to talk about what's going to happen in the future, and we'd love to get your insights on that, not just regarding your own brand, but also other brands that are very personality-driven, brands like Anderson Genève, brands like MB&F, for example, that aren't at London Watch Week, but still very relevant to the independent space. And so we will get into that topic very soon. First off, though, Robert, tell us, how have you been for the last 3.5 years, and how's business?
Yeah, great. No, it does seem like a long time ago, actually. To place it, like we'd launched the Sport Auto about 6 months previously when we last spoke, and that seems like an age ago since we launched that. Imagining Laurent Ferrier without the Sport Auto in the collection seems like a past life. No, so I mean all has been good. Yeah, we've had a really good run. Obviously, the crazy years that everybody knows were crazy for us. Things now I think have calmed down. Everything's still going good for us. I think there's some advantages in it being a little bit calmer, in that we can be kind of, closer to our customers. We can spend more time with them. We know who we're selling to. Obviously, when you kind of, when it's these crazy times, you're getting requested for watches from, all sides, all different kinds of people. And as a sales guy, it's much, much more challenging, I think, to manage the requests, the requests coming from directly to us, for the distribution, for all these different things. The current market climate is nicer for us to get to know our customers better, get closer, and really have a good time with them.
And I assume for a very high-end independent maker, that's the most important thing for you, knowing your customers well and working with them directly to source the pieces that they most desire?
Yeah, I mean, so definitely knowing them well, basically staying close to them, listening to them. I mean, we have a philosophy of basically supporting our distribution network. So we have almost no direct sales. The exception being that we do these Série Atelier every year, so like a workshop edition of anywhere between 5 and 40 pieces, but usually between 10 and 20. And those ones we sell directly, but otherwise we really tend to favor our distribution. So for us, we make no distinction between a customer that we get to know who's bought a watch from one of our retail partners and one that's bought from us directly. We don't differentiate between the two. Our door is open, and we welcome everybody, irrespective of where they bought their watch.
That's a nice policy to have. Not all brands operating in your price point or level of prestige take such a open and welcoming stance on these things. How do you feel when someone buys a Laurent Ferrier on a secondary market?
Yeah, I mean, the secondary market, it exists, and it's a huge part of the, of the industry, overall. And so it's something that you have to be active in, and you have to basically support the customers who are in there. If somebody spends, today 51,000 francs buying a new Sport Auto, and the next customer on a secondary market will probably spend about the same, that secondary customer still spent 51,000 francs on a watch. So it's our philosophy that we have to provide them with the level of service that they would expect from a brand. Obviously, got all the kind of warranty applications and things like that. If the watch is out of warranty, there's a cost associated with it, but we'll definitely provide the service to a customer, irrespective of where he bought the watch.
Knowing the customers as you do, whether they're direct customers or through your distribution network, what is it that you feel is the most attractive aspect of the brand itself to them?
I mean, I guess it'd be better to ask a few customers. that question, to not have to put words in their mouth. I mean, what we try and provide, obviously, is the product itself, and all the things that we communicate on, pretty clearly, like such as the finishing, chronometrical precision, smooth lines, understated luxury, all of those things, things that we really try and put into action and really try and make sure our watches represent. But then from like an interaction with the customer perspective, I think it's accessibility. I mean, you can, in our company, you can talk to anybody you want to. If you, Rob, tomorrow wanted to, come and, meet Laurent for a coffee, you can. It's not, our doors are open. We welcome everybody in. You can speak to everybody in the company. There's nobody that's kind of ring fenced. So I think that kind of really, people really kind of feel, it's a bit cheesy, but feel part of the family, when they come to see us and they get shown around. We do try and, connect with people and, be transparent and open and really let them see what we're doing.
I mean, that's a really important aspect and certainly a very sufficient answer to the question, because I think that is very important to people buying watches off this value, that they feel like they know the brand, that they're respected by the brand is available to them. I'd love to sit down for a coffee with a great man, although unfortunately there might be a bit of a language barrier, because if you remember the episode we recorded previously, it was the only bilingual episode we've ever had on the Real Time Show.
Remember.
You did a fantastic job translating on the fly, and I did my best to edit it so that it made sense to the listener. But a memorable moment, actually, one I really appreciate.
Yeah, so I tease Laurent because his English is better than he lets on. I've never heard him really speak it, but he understands it better than he lets on.
I had a strange incident with my former boss, Roland Schwertner from Nomos Glashütte in Geneva just recently. For 3 years, I was head of sales for certain territories for Nomos, and never once did Roland speak to me in English. Never once. In fact, I was told that he just didn't. He couldn't. But apparently he could, or he can, and he could. And this time we sat down together and he spoke to me in English. I was like, dude, life would have been so much easier if you'd not made me speak German. But here we are. So I suppose if there is the opportunity to one day have a coffee with Laurent, I will put my faith in his comprehension and then do my best to understand his French, which is plausibly possible.
Yeah. So I think I say, Englishmen and working for the brands and the Swiss watch industry, I think we are definitely a minority.
But your French is absolutely fluent. How long have you been over there now? And do you have a family member who's French, or did you learn when you were young?
I was born here, so I grew up in Geneva. Yeah. And so maybe you've heard of there's a nuclear reactor or a nuclear accelerator in Geneva called CERN.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So my dad moved out here in 1976 to work for CERN. Met my mum, and so then I was born 5 years later. So.
I see. So English father, Swiss mum.
No, both are English, but born out here, grew up out here. So.
That's a lovely combination. Yeah, very jealous. Unfortunately, I was born in the mid-'80s in Ireland, and no one in my region spoke native Irish at the time, so I never even picked up that to two English parents. So hence my language skills being way off the boil.
Well, I have to get Laurent to practice his English with you a bit then.
Well, I'm sure we can ask him to do that. But tell me this. He is such a central figure to the brand. His life story is so integral to not just the history and the general character of the brand, but also to the story behind the watches themselves. What's the long-term plan? Is there a succession plan in place for him? Does he have family members that are going to take over the brand when he decides to step away from the active day-to-day role that he's in now, or is there something else in the pipeline?
No, so, basically, I think, Christian is not poised to take over at the time being from Laurent. So basically, the company works in very much like a structured way. So we have basically a design office that Laurent heads at the moment. So basically, the head designer in the team is a guy called Martin Duet, and he basically does all the hands-on development of all the pieces. And once again, I kind of tease Laurent a little bit. He's like a little bit the Roman emperor, basically kind of gives a thumbs up and a thumbs down at the end of the process. Is it approved or not? And then on the whole movement side, we have all of the technical office, that really kind of developing all the movements and, as much from the aesthetic side as from the mechanical side. These two offices work together. And so I think, some of these team members, Laurent's been working with now for over 15 years. Basically, it's kind of all they know is how to work in Laurent's style. So I think, in terms of like the structure of the company itself is, it's very much impregnated with the man's, way of thinking and way of seeing and where it is. And I think it's everywhere in the company. It's in the design of the watches, the simplicity, the understatedness, nothing too ostentatious, but also I think hopefully a bit like we were talking about before, in the way the company operates, being very, very fair to all partners, trying to be, do what we say what we do, no surprises, be predictable, all of these things are kind of, Mr. Ferrier himself has trickled down, even to, into my position, into my role. When I first started in the company, like a very clear mandate to respect the distribution, but they will be the reason for our success. So to treat them respectfully and with with respect basically. I think the man is everywhere in the company, as it is already.
How often does he give a thumbs down? Has that reduced over time as the teams become more aligned with him?
Yeah, very much so, very much so. I mean, it's more, I think, kind of in terms of, coloration and things like that. I think the team were, not so much me. We were talking, when we were offline, you and I, about middle age, and I'm the third oldest person in the company now.
Really?
Yeah. But yeah, so so like often like the colors are maybe a little bit brighter, and kind of Laurent kind of nudges it back to kind of more kind of like somber, not somber, that's what goes, but like kind of calmer, calmer
Muted
colors. Yeah, muted. That's maybe the better
subtle
term.
Yeah. Refined, elegant.
So. But yeah, but yeah, I think in terms of like, I mean, I'd say like, it's very much in like the brand new developments, maybe there he's a little bit more implicated in terms of choice of colors and things like that. So the shapes and stuff like that, I think the team pretty much have a handle on. And then the kind of, when we do kind of like, animations for different, different collections that already exist and things like that, there I think the team operate pretty much autonomously. So.
Tell us what Laurent's day-to-day looks like. Is he mostly based in Switzerland, or is he still traveling a fair bit to meet with new collectors and retailers and whatnot, or does he have more people around him doing that for him?
Yeah, no, so I mean, Laurent essentially doesn't travel anymore. So I mean, I think the last long trip that he did was in 2021. Was basically where him and I, we went on a trip, and that was the last trip. And so I mean, occasionally maybe a bit of a European trip, like maybe get on the train to Paris or something like that, or possibly jump over to London. But I think anything further afield wouldn't happen basically. So I mean, his day to day is very much kind of kind of going over all the design plans. I think also kind of talking to the different suppliers as well. So kind of, if he's looking for a specific effect on a kind of dial, kind of talking to the supplier, kind of explaining to them how he would want the dial to be constructed, what kind of techniques he would kind of advise they use, that kind of thing to make it. So spends quite a lot of time doing that.
So tell us about your supply partners, and you don't have to name them if you aren't able to do that, but the relationships you've built up with them over the years must also be similar to the relationships Laurent has established within the team, that they get more and more attuned to his desires and the way that he likes to work and the aesthetic he's trying to achieve. Do you have multiple suppliers for every individual component just to make sure that you have a broad spread of options, like 4 or 5 dial suppliers, for example, or do you just work with one?
So no, we work with different ones, but it's more kind of related to their kind of primary skill set. So if you have maybe one that's kind of like, really, known for kind of enameling, then that would typically be the one that we use for the, for enameling. If it's kind of, different kinds of finish like engraving, we might use another one. So it's more in terms of like what kind of dial we're looking for, that we'll talk to the different kinds of suppliers. But then, it does, I mean, even with like, our best selling watch is the Sport Auto. So it's about a quarter of our production is the Sport Auto. And there we do have backup suppliers. But we still produce most of the watch using the primary supplier. The backup supplier is basically just there if we have a big problem, which we've not had until to date with the primary supplier.
So what's the supply like at the moment? Are things running smoothly? Are you able to get things out on time? I know there's always going to be a longer waiting time for a piece of this caliber, but is it going well for you, or are you finding some bottlenecks in the current industry?
No, it's not. I mean, basically, I know that everybody in the industry is talking about bottlenecks. We haven't felt it yet in terms of like, everything that we're asking for is being delivered in a reasonable time frame. So for the moment, everything, for us is going okay. But, we do anticipate a supply challenge coming. That's what we're hearing from, from many sources, is that basically supply challenges is coming. But so yeah, that's why. Also, I mean, like, once again, going back to what we were talking about before, like, in the image of the man himself, like, where, we plan a long way ahead. So, basically we know, more or less all of our orders up until the end of next year. We already know what they are. So basically we place our supply of components and things, already. So we're kind of hedged quite a long way into the future for that supply. Yeah, I guess where sometimes we run into little delays is when we have new products. Because obviously when you have a brand new product, when you start assembling it and, things like that, and, proper like, production, process, then there are little surprises. There are things that kind of pop up that didn't pop up on the prototypes. And, when the watchmakers are putting it together, they see things that, we didn't notice before. So yeah, usually when it's the first watch, then maybe there we have a few constraints because we have to rework certain components to basically make them the level that we want to. But usually when it's running, then we're usually all right.
At what point do you start the communication when you've got a design, a release, and a supply process in mind? Do you announce the product before you've started end production while you've just worked with prototypes, or do you perform a different strategy? Yep.
No. So basically, like our partners know of our new releases typically 12 to 18 months before we launch. And so then we obviously have, their kind of like their purchase intentions, and basically then based on those purchase intentions, we then go and secure our supply contracts.
I guess that explains maybe why you've not run into the same supply issues as many smaller brands, not just because you're a prestigious brand that I'm sure any supplier would love to be associated with, but also because you manage your supply so far ahead of time, you're able to make the necessary investment to ensure the product will work and perform as you want. Okay, yes, of course, there's going to be those issues that you mentioned that you'll run into when you hit production, and when something's produced in series, it gets harder and harder to ensure. But that does at least explain it, like why you're able to do it in that way. You said that you anticipate supply issues on the horizon. Why is that? Is that just a general feeling you're getting from everyone else in the industry, or have you already noticed certain things getting harder to source?
No, I mean, we've not run into any supply constraints as such, in terms of like, our partners our supply partners are asking us to kind of, re-clarify our needs and stuff like that, so that kind of gives an indication that they're in a planning phase. So that, but yeah, it's mainly based on, what we're hearing. I mean, just even in the general press, you hear of basically kind of redundancies in different sectors and things like that. So yeah, we're kind of, we're kind of keeping our ear close to the ground. We're being realistic and basically taking every precaution that we can to kind of ensure our supply.
So you work a lot with precious metals, and even since we spoke last, the raw price of gold. Well, yeah, talk to me about that. Like, I mean, you're in an interesting situation now. I mean, some of your full gold pieces, which I have to say are some of the most desirable pieces on the market in totality, must have skyrocketed in terms of production costs. What kind of challenges does that present to you as a brand that is, I'm sure, not trying to milk the retail price? You've got to hold it relatively close to what it was, but yeah, how have your clientele responded to the necessary increases, if you've made any?
Well, I think that's basically, especially from a sales perspective, it's been nightmare number one. Basically, we've had like a very small increase, like or 3% on basically all the non-gold pieces. That didn't, virtually nothing, an extra 1,000, 2,000 francs for on the watch is not enormous, and so that was absolutely fine. And then the gold ones, basically, once again, we try and be as fair as possible. So previously, between, let's say, like a leather strap watch, between a steel or titanium and a gold piece, we used to only have 10,000 franc difference between the two. But now, with the increase in the price of gold, we've had to increase that to 14,000. So I think we're still being fair. We're basically just passing on the gold price increase that we've had come through onto the watches. So we're not increasing our margin, as well. Basically, we're just passing on the raw material cost increase to the customers. So
I guess that's something you're keeping a close eye on, though, because that kind of generosity on your part, as it were, to not pass on the additional costs of gold in form of a multiple is fine to a point. But there's, what if it jumps up another 20-30%? There's going to be some problems there, no?
Yeah, but basically, it's all to do with our supply contracts. So we are stable for quite a long time now. So basically, with the contracts that we have, and then when we need to revisit it, we revisit it. So like in terms of we're not at risk in terms of basically kind of a margin reduction.
Good.
Yeah, and then of course I think then obviously as a brand we're looking at all the different options. We have the Sport Auto in gold. That piece has 230 grams of gold in it. So that one was heavily impacted by the increase in price. And so we're looking at kind of product alterations. Do we do a version of that watch on a rubber bracelet instead of a gold one, so that we can have that model available at a more attractive price point. So we're kind of debating all of these different ideas, to try and basically get something that makes the most sense to our customers out there.
I've thought for quite some time that bicolor was due a bit of a resurgence, just from an aesthetic perspective. I thought, with this kind of 80s, 90s nostalgia that's permeating fashion, especially, maybe the market price of precious metals is going to force people's hands to go down that route a little sooner.
Yeah, possibly, yeah. So, it's fun, and I think it's like the platinum as well. Is we're looking at platinum much more than we have in the past. Because like in terms of raw metal weight, it's cheaper than gold. It's usually not end up being cheaper on the watch because of all the machining costs, which are higher and more complicated. But yeah. So anyway, these are the kind of debates we're having. In terms of we should launch next year the first full collection piece in a platinum case, which we've not done until now. So
I think that's something that's often lost on the buying public. Like, platinum is so expensive because it's so hard to machine, and it's such a awful process to go through, really. But now with the rising price of gold, then it becomes a more palatable option for brands to explore. And I think, strangely, it becomes a value buy almost, in comparison to the old gaps.
Yeah.
Not going to pretend that I haven't got a full collection of platinum watches now all of a sudden, but I wouldn't mind buying one now. When you look at the prices in comparison, you're like, oh, actually, that's pretty reasonable for platinum, because we still have in our minds that platinum is the thing that's just way more expensive. But yeah, not the case anymore. So tell us about your distribution network, or your retailers, should I say, like your partners that you work with around the globe. How many do you have now, and which regions are having the most success?
I mean, so basically, I mean, we have 44 doors. A few of those doors were the same partner. So we have, in a few cities, we have, the same partner that might have two or three doors. So it's a little bit over 30 individual retail partners. I think, like, for most brands at the moment, like, kind of a lot of it's linked to kind of like the macroeconomic stuff. So, really, like, the US. US is doing very, very well for us at the moment. But actually the UK as well, despite all of the kind of, changes in the UK, economy and system, the UK is doing well for us as well. Italy is doing pretty good for us as well. Japan. It's
yeah, there's still plenty of rich people in the UK. There's just quite a lot more not rich people, I think, is the issue. But yeah, the rich ones are doing all right.
Well, I think also, what's great for us with the UK as well is that we're selling to locals, which we really really enjoy. And I think maybe that's where the market's changed a little bit in terms of, like, if you wind back the clock in the UK, kind of pre-COVID, it was very much, well, not very much, but there were quite a lot of tourism buys. So basically, people coming from abroad into the UK. To buy watches, and therefore it was you had less visibility on who you were selling to. But now, with the kind of the dispersion of the VAT rebate and things like that, those customers that would have come to buy in London might be now buying in Geneva because the VAT is, or Switzerland because the VAT is possibly a bit more attractive, but also in other European countries that still offer the VAT rebate.
Is it 8.2% now in Switzerland?
Yeah, 8.1, yeah.
8.1, I had a feeling it went up. Okay, are there any major markets that you're not yet in, like emerging markets like India or Mexico, for example?
No, we're in both of those.
Great.
Yeah.
Very nice. Yeah, I think that's the place to be. There seems to be a lot of enthusiasm about both those markets and the rate that they're growing. So you're going to be in London Watch Week yourself, or as this episode airs, you will be in London for the Watch Week, organised by our good friends over there, especially my dear friend Lucy Cheesewright, who I know you're very close to yourself.
Yeah, very looking forward to seeing everybody again.
Tell us what people can expect to see when they visit you over there for LWW.
So basically, we'll come with obviously the full collection of watches, and I think the one that most people won't have seen is a new Sport Traveler. So this is the one that we launched at Watches and Wonders, and we'll be bringing that piece. And so we are starting shipments of that piece in basically the next week or so. So basically, as it kind of hits the stores, we'll come with a piece for everybody to see. And then, we'll have all of the collection. I'll come with a few kind of, a few little goodies in terms of little kind of like demonstration kits that show how different movements work and stuff like that. So, yeah.
And will you be partaking in any extracurricular events, or extracurricular is maybe not the right word, after hours events, evening soirees?
Well, I mean, knowing myself, I surely will. I think there's already an opening gala. I think that's been very kindly organised by Lucy and Tom and Justin and the Zenith team. So we're very happy to be participating in that as well. And then so then the other ones, I'm sure we'll take it as it goes. On a night by night basis.
Best way to do it. So I guess you are traveling a lot yourself, representing the brand around the world.
Yep. Short answer, yes.
Short answer. How often are you on the road? Because as the head of sales, I mean, that's a lot of responsibility on your shoulders to manage that network and to make sure things are ticking over and the bottom line looks healthy.
I'd say it's about 40% of the time that I'm away. And so
okay.
Yeah. So that's quite.
Do you still enjoy it?
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. I mean, I think, when I was, much younger, like the first assignments, if you like. Like it was the whole excitement of the traveling and the, the airplanes and the hotels, all this kind of stuff. And that's completely gone. I mean, if there's a way to kind of like, Star Trek, like instant transfer to a place, then I definitely, definitely take that. But I still very much enjoy being there. We have, obviously I'm on air, this kind of podcast, but I genuinely mean it that, we really have some like really great partners, as much for their professional, approach as, very human, very, very, good people. And I think, I consider, many of them also friends, so, very much enjoy going to see them and kind of, experiencing their culture with a local. And that much I very much enjoy. I think, even when you've been doing this job for, over 10 years now that I have, you keep learning new things, especially about cultures, which is fantastic.
So you have in the past collaborated with other brands I remember there was something with Erwerk, was there not, several years ago? Nine years ago?
That was an Only Watch piece, yeah.
Yeah, and that obviously set people's hearts racing. Is there any plans in pipeline, near or distant future, for Laurent Ferrier to collaborate with other brands? Because we're in this kind of brand-on-brand collab phase where it's starting to become a bit more de rigueur. So what's the story with you on that front?
Well, so I mean, I think for us, we're not. There's no concrete plans. There's a few brainstorm ideas, and so we have some brainstorm ideas that we've spoken to other brands about, and they seem to be positive. But basically, from a brainstorm idea to this actually becoming a project, there's still a little bit of road ahead of us. So the ideas are bouncing around, but there's nothing concretely in the plan yet.
No bioceramic swatch on the horizon, then?
No, I'm not sure. I'm not sure Mr. Hayek would. I'm not sure he'd get his strings of people waiting outside a store for a bioceramic Laurent Ferrier.
Well, who knows? Who knows? I'm sure he'd be interested to try it if you were, but I can't imagine that's really in the brand's future. What do you think about it from a philosophical perspective? Not the AP swatch color. We'll leave that one where it is. But I mean, in general, brand and brand collaborations. Do you think it's healthy, or do you think that it dilutes each brand's message?
No, I don't think so. I think it's a little bit of fun, kind of. I think it allows brands to kind of work together a little bit, makes them closer. And I think that's an example that we have with Erwerk. I think was quite an incredible one, like in terms of two very different brands in terms of appearance and design ethos, like a very 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 different. But it still works. So I think it's if it's something like obviously is done too much, then basically it'll probably run out of steam. But I guess it will at some point. I think. This, the Swatch collabs are great, but, I guess if they keep doing them for 10 years, at the end of 10 years, then I guess the excitement would be less than it is, today. And I think in independence, it would be a similar kind of thing. I think if every year there's, 20 collaborations between independent watch brands, eventually, the collectors will the excitement of that will fade.
We've talked behind the scenes on the Real Time Show ad nauseum about the motivations behind the current AP Swatch collab, and ultimately we come down with it as mostly a marketing exercise to break into new demographics or to attract younger audiences to the brand. Given the fact we're talking about the future of Laurent Ferrier and how it is positioning itself for relevance with future generations, not just within the company but also without. How are you reaching this Gen Z and even Gen Alpha audience? I suppose the Alphas may not be on your radar just yet, but Gen Z is certainly coming through and makes up a large portion of a potential watch buying public. How are you speaking to them?
Oh, there you go, Rob. You see, they're showing me my age. So I didn't even know what Gen Alphas were. So
you got a few years before you need to worry about them, mate. Don't worry.
Exactly. So, basically, I think one thing you'll have seen with the Laurent Ferrier is I think we've really ramped up our marketing over the past 5 years. Roughly 5 years ago, I think our marketing was very very rudimentary. We were doing almost nothing. Social media presence very, 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 very small. And I think we've really kind of step changed our kind of approach. Who we're talking to influencers, talking to the different magazines and things like that, to try and reach this younger audience. And once again, I think it's a very kind of geographical thing. I think our customers in Europe, generally speaking, tend to be more the kind of like 40, even 50 plus customers, the collectors that already have like a nice collection, of the big well-known brands, and they're kind of like, foraying into something a bit different. But then in, let's say, somewhere like Hong Kong, it's much younger. So I mean, there we have a great relationship with the horology club there, and a young bunch of guys. And I think thanks to them, we've been noticed by a younger audience in Hong Kong than maybe where we are elsewhere.
Well, that seems like a pretty healthy mix to have these younger cohorts joining the Ferrier family in stages, one after the other. Like, you don't need to do it all at once. Of course, each of these younger collectors that you get on board and becomes part of your universe will no doubt become an ambassador and go on and show their watches all over the world. Because to be fair, to be a Gen Z buying a Laurent Ferrier, you're probably a person of the world that is going to travel and is going to show that watch and is going to share that story, because that's quite an incredible level of collecting to have got to at such a young age. Are you holding any specific events for the younger people in the industry? Are you making an effort to do more physical shows for them particularly, or are you just allowing this to develop organically?
I mean, it's mainly organic, and also we work very closely with our distribution partners and the event organization. So in terms of like the standalone events that we do, basically like Watches and Wonders, Geneva Watch Days, there's a few of it like Watch Time New York, where I think we still kind of consider it a corporate event, as we're kind of not doing it, with a retail partner. And then for the rest of the events that we do them with our retail partners. And then basically there, it's very much based on the demographic of their customers. I think if you take something like Dubai Watch Week and Siddiqui, they had done a phenomenal job in terms of the whole organization of the fair, the communication, the kind of the appealing to different age brackets, the different tools that they're using. I mean, I think that really is the benchmark of probably how to communicate with the widest specific different age groups.
As a sales professional and someone that's on the road and traveling 40% of your time, and obviously being exposed to many different cultures, different buying habits, different product desires globally, is there any gap you identify within your collection that you could do with filling in terms of either complication or aesthetics?
It's a tough one, because obviously, like, I think more conservative markets and countries we would appeal to more, and then maybe kind of more avant-garde-ish ones, as from a general population perspective, we maybe appeal to a bit less. So I think in terms of like countries and cultures where there's lots of bright colors and and very kind of like noticeable shapes and forms, I guess there, generally speaking, we would be less interesting. But then again, our production is so small. Like we produce 500 watches a year, and that even in those markets, we're able to find 10 to 15 people every year that want something a little bit more conservative, something a little bit more discreet. So I think if we had a strategy of really we wanted to basically have a watch for everybody, then I think there would be a few kind of like necessities for brighter colors, more noticeable timepieces. But I don't that isn't our kind of strategy. I think it's more basically like kind of trying to find the people that our watches appeal to. And once again, it's helped by, I think, the limited distribution, is that we can invest the time and the money getting to know these people and showing them what we do, and being able to place the 500 watches that we produce.
I'm very glad to hear it. I mean, there is a quite a common, I wouldn't even say desire, a sense of need expressed by many brands to sweep up as many potential customers as possible with very little care or concern about what that does to the brand. Of course, you could make a timepiece that wasn't Laurent Ferrier and it would appeal to a different audience, but that's obviously not your goal. And growing a business doesn't necessarily need to be volume related. I mean, would you be happy to stay at 500 pieces a year and maybe push the prices and the complexity and the luxury of each piece up a little higher? Or are you just happy at the level that you are and want to sustain that because of the demand outstripping the potential supply, feel comfortable with many years down the line being able to exist in that vein?
No, I think so. I mean, I think the difficult few years that the industry's been through, and I think that I think it's kind of like confirmed that our strategy is a good one, and what suits us. Our strategy suits us well. Because I think we're able to. It's harder to sell a watch now than it was a few years ago, but we still manage to sell them. So it's I think the strategy of the company is not to really wrap up to increase production, to suddenly jump to 2,000 pieces or 5,000 pieces a year. That's definitely not the production. If you look at basically the growth of Laurent Ferrier over the years, basically when we add new watches, that tends to increase production a little bit. So basically, the big one for us was basically when the Sport Auto came in, then we suddenly started producing about 100 extra watches a year, as that model came in. So I think we could possibly increase to maybe 600, 700 pieces, something like that. Maybe over a longer period, maybe drift up to somewhere like 1,000. But I think more than 1,000 would be a challenge. But even from a production perspective, we spend a lot of time doing decoration, doing internal angles, and we really want to get them at the best level that we possibly can. And so it's a really it's a challenge for us to find the right people to decorate at the level that we want, and that's kind of like a natural cap that we have on our on our production. Even if we changed our strategy and said, okay, next year we want to produce 2,000 pieces, we wouldn't be able to find the decorators to be able to do that. So it would it'd be a longer glide path. So.
That's very interesting, isn't it? Because it's all really a balance. I mean, if you set out your strategy to sell half as many pieces, the demand for them wouldn't change, or the volume of demand wouldn't change, but the prices people would be willing to pay for each individual piece could feasibly double because they're twice as rare and twice as hard to come by. So you've reached that level of sufficient expertise and quality where your clients aren't going anywhere. You are physically constrained by the availability of necessary skills to produce your products. Product sounds like such an awful way to talk about Laurent Ferrier, to produce your masterpieces, let's say. Forgive me. And it's a strong position because you've carved out an incredible brand, a brand that is understood, a brand that is very well communicated now, is obviously starting to gain traction with younger audiences around the globe. And you have a tight grip on what that brand is going to be for the future. So you must be feeling pretty confident, right, Robert?
Yeah, I think so. Thanks for your kind words. That's really very, very kind of you to say. And I think basically we're kind of doing things step by step, building things bit by bit. We want to be fair to our customers. It's not basically to we're not trying to reduce supply to increase rarity and hike up prices. We're not playing any of those games. Basically, we put a lot of work into our watches, and the price that we request is basically a reflection of the investment that we do into producing them. I think the whole going right back to the beginning of the conversation. I think the philosophy of the man that's instilled in all of us here is be fair to everybody, be fair to your suppliers, be fair to your employees, be fair to your customers. Try and do things with integrity and respect. And obviously the kind of pricing and availability and all those things are kind of included in that kind of strategy and philosophy.
Well, to wrap it up, we'll stick with a 3-word signed by Fair, Friendly, Fine Watchmaking from LF himself and the team. Congratulations, Robert. I'm glad that everything's going so well. It's lovely to speak to you again, and I hope you have a wonderful time in London, where you will be now when this episode airs. If any of our audience have questions for Robert or the team, then please do get in touch. You know where to find us on Instagram. You can contact us at therealtime.show, or you can get in touch with us via the contact form on the official website, www.therealtime.show. We'll be back soon with more top quality watch content and interviews with the industry's finest. Until then, stay safe and keep on ticking.